Hello, my name is Clayton Balmas, and I'm here today with you as your teacher with our video classroom here at SynMax University, available at synmaxperformancelubricants.com. The reason I'm here with you today is to share with you about our power steering fluid presentation. Now we've got another presentation which is following, which actually shows the performance of the lubrication under wear conditions. Now, what I'm going to do is when I go through this presentation, to save time, I'm going to go kind of fast, skipping over a couple things. When you want, you're able to download the presentation and maybe look at some of the details I didn't have time to go over. So here we go. Power steering fluid, how aerospace formulation does make a difference. Now, here's a basic power steering fluid unit that we see here. What we have to remember is that a power steering unit, all right, is basically you have a pump, and then you have a area that you're filling, which is your cylinder. Sometimes we have a reservoir which fills the pump. Now this KRC unit has the reservoir on the pump. Over here we have the cylinder. Now when you put these together, these elements, what we have to make sure of is that there's no filter from the oil to the pump to here. If you want a filter or cooler, you have it on the return line. Say, Clayton, why is that? Well, you have to remember that a power steering unit is nothing more than a small hydraulic unit, okay? Which means we're creating energy here, and then we're flowing it through the piston, and it has to have the ability to flow back and forth. And back and forth. And if there's any kinks or filters in the line, it stops that. Now, so one more time, we'll have our reserve tank or the reserve tank on the piston. Then we'll have on the pump. Then we have the piston, which is the area that gets filled. We have our servo valve, which is our regulator. And then we have the fluid come back. I say, Clayton, I've seen all this before. Yeah, I know. We all have. This is a $2,000 business model by the time you add everything up. But the advantage that we're going to talk about today is how the fluid makes a difference. Okay. Now, in this presentation, we're going to talk about the base oil, the molecular structure of the oil, and how diamond-like additives can protect the components and other additives. See, the thing here is when the oil is not working good and the system has to work harder because the oil isn't working good, the pump has to work harder. If the pump has to work harder to fill the chamber, then it requires more energy to do the same job, and it starts to burn the unit up. We don't want that. The answer is a hydraulic fluid with an aerospace formulation, which performs better than current power steering fluids. We have to remember that it's a science of base oils, additive packages, and it's a chemical decision to make this work. Now, no matter the question, the bottom line answer is friction versus energy. When we reduce the friction and workload, we increase the energy efficiency. When we're breaking down the performance of the fluid, there's two specific areas that we're looking at. Number one is the base oil that we choose. 95% of the base oil, 90% of the performance of the fluid is found within the base oil. So when you are able to have a better product, it will perform better. Now here's the deal. 5% of the fluid performance is within the additive package, which we'll get into in a minute. 95% of the hydraulic fluid performance starts with the base oil. Now here we have an illustration of a bunch of bigger and smaller molecules inside of here. What happens when you have bigger molecules and they're trying to work together, they don't function as well. What we want is a more harmony of the molecules. So what we select is a product with synthetic aerospace, and viscosity stabilizers within the oil. What this does is when the pump creates its energy going into the cylinder, it will have a better, more efficient way to do the job, which we will explain. Furthermore, you want to have a premium viscosity stabilization package. Clayton, what's that mean? Well, when the hydraulic oil is getting squeezed together, we need that to work at its best performance. The other thing you want is a nice additive package inside of it, which protects the metal, helps the seals run better, and helps the fluid flow. Clayton, is everything the same? It just as power steering fluid? No, it's not. We're going to get into that right now. Remember we talked about those molecules and how they interact with each other and how they work either better or worse? Well, here's the deal. We can see this in the illustration, which you have available to what you have, is that if you have uneven molecules, and we have what's called oil friction. If we were to take those molecules and they were uneven and they're moving back and forth, okay, it'd be bumpy and it'd be hard for it to do. So what we want to do is make that easier. I say, why, Clayton? I'll tell you why. Because within oil, there is two types of friction involved. You have the molecules with the friction in the molecules on the inside, and then you have the friction of the oil against the metal itself. So when you reduce the friction of the molecules and against the metal itself, it's happier. If it's happier, if it's cooler. If it's cooler, it runs more stable. Now, what we want to do is have the molecules all of an even size. Clayton, I don't understand this. Here, I'll make it simple. Next time you're at Walmart or the store, I want you to get 2 bags of M&Ms. I want you to get the plain and the peanut. Now, I want you to rub them together. Now, if you take the peanut ones and you rub them together, it'll be bumpy and hard to do it. But if you get the regular ones, you know, the black bag, and you rub them together, they'll go nice and smooth. That's exactly what the molecules are doing. Say, Clayton, what's all this stuff about molecules? I'm going to get that into you right now. The better the molecular structure of the oil, the less friction that the oil has to do, and the more efficient it is for the pump to work to fill the cylinder, as we can see here. The less friction the molecules have to do, the better the efficiency. You're repeating yourself. There's a reason for that. And here's why. I have an illustration here which has like a little pump filling what we call a volume area. Okay? This is the same thing as if I had a big injection mold system, or if I had a big hydraulic stuff on a truck, or a little hydraulic system here in your race car or your street car. Here's how it works. When the pump is moving, you are moving molecules and energy, and it has to fill the cylinder. If the molecules are bumpy and bigger and they're not as efficient, it takes more energy for the pump to fill the volume area. Wow. Well, I want less. So if you have a better molecular structure and it doesn't have all the gaps in it, then the volume area is more stable. Wow. So the key here is that volume area stability provides increased fluid pressure and energy. So we put both of our products together, as we see in our illustration. We need to have a more even molecular structure for it to work. Because as the oil molecule percentage increases, so does the volume area stability. Again, as the oil molecule percentage increases, so does the stability. Now, when you have the line in between the pump and the piston, or there, we have to make sure it is the shortest and straightest line possible, as you can see in this illustration. Anytime you have bends or curves or adjustments with adapters, it will create turbulence in the molecules. You don't want that. You want a straight shot going to it. The other thing that we have to remember is we have seals Do you know what actually holds the pressure? It's the seals. So if the seals, let's say this is the cylinder and here's the seals, okay? If the seals are working and they're more pliable in what they're doing, they're going to hold the pressure much easier and much better. Now, when we put everything together, we can see here in the illustration that we have the diamond-like coating, we have the molecules, and the anti-wear structure. Now, the reason this is important is when this all works in symphony, we can protect the metal surface. Why is that important? I thought it runs on oil. I'll tell you why. Because 90% of the wear is in the first 15 seconds of the startup. If I can have that protected at startup, and when the oil starts getting a little thin, it's going to work a lot longer. Excuse me. So, we want the molecular structure to work better. We want the anti-wear portion to work better. When all these work in symphony, it is a much easier thing. I say, Clayton, why is this so important? Well, when you're in a road race situation, you're going down the road and the steering wheel is straight and it's really fine. You know, when you're going at Road America 160 miles an hour and then you turn at, let's say, you know, you're 30 miles an hour when you take your turn. Then the power steering pump starts to go. If you're in a late model situation where you're turning left all the time, actually the car wants to turn left, so you're kind of fighting it. So when you're going down the straight, you got to keep that pump working. And then the pump's working when you turn left. So no matter what, the pump's working either or, okay? Because you're fighting because the steering wants to go left, so you got to try to keep it straight. The pump is working all the time. So here's the bottom line. When we created the SynMax product here in the power steering fluid, we just got upset because at the industry because, you know, we love KRC, we love Sweet, we love Appleton, we love all these great manufacturers that are out there, but we wanted to build a product that wouldn't have the pump burn up over the long haul. Now there's a couple other things that we have to do, that we have to remember. There's another thing in here, it's called ISO cleanliness of the oil. When you allow dirt and contaminants to get into the oil, it affects the ISO cleanliness. Well, what's that mean, Clayton? Well, that's kind of a commercial term. It means this. When the oil gets dirty from either slightly getting burnt, that's oxidization, or the atmosphere as it breathes, it affects the anti-foam package inside of the oil. That's one of the reasons it gets foamy. So, all we ask you to do is every time you change your oil, you don't have to drain the whole system. You just, you know, take this out, suck out from the reservoir, and then just pour some new in, and then just that few ounces refreshes it, and it's ready to go. So bottom line, the product that we feel that we've created against all the other products out there has the following advantages. We have aerospace synthetic base oils. We put in what's called PolyX, which is a viscosity stabilization package, the seal rejuvenation, premium anti-wear technology, diamond-like additives, which lowers the coefficient of friction to 0.15. Also, when you lower the coefficient of friction on the pump, it helps the pump work about 8 to 12% improvement. That relates to a savings of 1/2 to 1 horsepower in torque for the engine just in the fluid itself. It's also universal with other fluids that are out there. Now, Clayton, can I use this in my street car? Well, of course. You could be able to use the same technology in your street car, in your truck, and in your race car. So that's the end. So this is Clayton Balmas, and I'm your teacher. I wanted to thank you very much for being with us today here at SynMax University at synmaxperformancelubricants.com, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at our next session. Bye now.